Ranking new movies released in October from worst to best. In last place is so easily Tron Ares, which is honestly kind of heartbreaking because I absolutely love Tron Legacy. But besides this movie giving me a great soundtrack from the Nine Inch Nails, this really gives me nothing else I care about. Like, no, Jared Leto's not good in the lead role. I don't care about the two main CEO characters. We spend barely any time in the digital grid, which is what everybody loves about the Tron films. Some of the action sequences with like the Tron bikes in the real world are kind of cool, but otherwise I just could not get myself to care about this story. And it's not like Tron Legacy was some revolutionary movie either. It's a very generic story of a kid trying to find his father and finding love along the way, but at least it felt like a human story, and you had incredibly cool visuals and the soundtrack to back it up and really elevate the experience. Tron Ares is pretty much like, yeah, we'll just do the soundtrack part and forget everything else. At number 13 is The Lost Buses, the new Apple TV movie that came out this month, and it stars Matthew McConaughey as his father, and he goes into this wildfire to go rescue this teacher and a bunch of her students. It's not a bad movie really, but it just really never emotionally clicked for me, and I didn't find myself caring about much of the things going on, which I know sounds bad, but it's true. At number 12 is Good Boy, a horror movie told from the perspective of a dog that can see things that his owners can't, which is a cool concept, but I'm not gonna lie, the movie's kind of a nothing burger, and I don't like to dump on like these very small independent movies just made by a few people. And I am a big dog person myself, and I do have to admit this is some incredible dog acting. It took them years to get all these different shots and reactions of this dog actually reacting to things properly. I honestly would not be mad if he got a Best Actor nomination. I think that would be really funny, but otherwise I was just pretty bored by most of this movie. At number 11 is Springsteen, Deliver Me From Nowhere, which I'm not gonna lie, I am not that big of a Bruce Springsteen fan, so this movie didn't really win me over and be like, oh my god, I need to check out a lot more Bruce Springsteen music, but it's a fine enough musical biopic that has just enough sauce to elevate it over being incredibly generic. I do think this movie does a good job at kind of exploring who the man Bruce Springsteen really is, some of the problems and trauma he experienced as a child and stuff, where a lot of musical biopics kind of shy away from actually getting in details about the life story, and Jeremy Allen White was fine as him. It's just an okay, good enough movie. At number 10, I have Good Fortune, a movie which follows Keanu Reeves as this guardian angel, and he decides he's going to switch the lives of a very poor and a very rich person to show the poor person that, hey, having money isn't everything it seems like it is, but it quickly backfires when he's like, oh my god, having money fixes all of my problems. And this is a pretty solid comedy. It's nothing revolutionary. A lot of the humor is kind of millennial core, but I did find a good amount of it pretty funny. At number 8, I have Steve, which was a new Netflix movie with Cillian Murphy, and he is a teacher at a reform school dealing with some really troubled students, and he also has a pretty troubled and messy past himself. And I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I am an incredibly biased Cillian Murphy fan. I pretty much love all of his movies, or at least he gives a good performance in them all, and this movie's no exception. He is really great in here, really showing all the different layers of this teacher, how much he really cares for his students while struggling with his own issues. At number 8, I have The Smashing Machine, aka The Rock, just trying to prove to the world that he can actually do a serious acting performance, and I think he really succeeded. I was actually blown away by this transformation. Like, I could not see The Rock in this character whatsoever. And I say character, but he is playing the real life UFC fighter Mark Kerr, going through a very rough time in his life where he's kind of fighting overseas. He's falling into addiction to steroids and different drugs. He's going through a lot of problems with his relationship, so it is kind of just like checking off all the Oscar bait kind of checklist things. But I do think this movie is very good, especially for the first hour. The only problem is that it doesn't sensationalize the real life events of this guy's life, so it kind of ends up becoming a little bit boring in the second hour, and you're just like, okay, where's this story going? Why do I care about things that are happening anymore? But I do think there are a lot of really good moments in there, and bolstered by some really good performances. Number 7 is Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein, which is a movie coming to Netflix next month, but it did release in theaters this month. I wanted to absolutely love this film, but I kind of just ended up liking it. I do think this movie does take a very long time to get going. A lot of the stuff in like the first hour just focusing on Frankenstein before he creates the monster, I wasn't that interested in, and even when this movie does get into the bulk of the story, I was still never blown away by anything. Like, nothing's bad, nothing was great in my opinion. But on a technical level, I do think all the set and costume designs are absolutely incredible. Everything is so beautifully like elaborate and gothic, and it really just immerses you in this world even when the story wasn't. I was like, oh wow, this is actually very pretty to look at. And I think everybody in the cast is good enough, and I wasn't really blown away by the two main leads, which is kind of a hot take. Like, I do like Oscar Isaac in the role, but I think someone else could have done it better. And Jacob Elordi as the monster himself, again, it's very good, but I see people saying it's like the best of the year. I didn't see that. I much prefer actually Mia Goth and Christoph Waltz in this film. Number 3 is Code 3, a film that came out of absolutely nowhere, and this was just dumped on like video on demand places to rent. And it's kind of like this early 2000s or early 2010s style comedy about the last 24-hour shift of a paramedic, and he's training this new recruit at the same time. I was really surprised by how hilarious I actually found this movie to be. It has a lot of really good heart in it, and kind of just a great moral of the story being like, hey, these paramedics deserve so much better. They have to deal with all these absolutely insane things on the job, and like I said, this is just really a pleasant surprise that I didn't didn't even know existed until it released. Now before the top 5, drop a like and follow real quick and let me know in the comments below your favorite October new movies. At number 5 for me is Roofman, starring Channing Tatum playing the real-life criminal Jeffrey Manchester. And if you don't know this man's story, it's absolutely wild. He robbed like over 40 McDonald's by breaking in through the roof, went to prison, escaped, and then lived in a Toys R Us for months. And that's where the movie really picks up for most of the story, him in this Toys R Us. So obviously just the entire nature of the story is wildly entertaining and very interesting. The movie does a very good job at portraying this story. I think Channing Tatum and Kirsten Dunst are really great in this, and kind of just watching him live this life on the run, kind of forming like this second family. It's just absolutely wild, but a really entertaining and oddly charming movie too, because you do end up really liking this guy, even though he has done some really terrible things. And this is another movie that does a great job at not really embellishing or like sensationalizing the real life events that it's based on. Like a lot of this seems very true to the actual real life story, which I really appreciate. And number 4 is the Chainsaw Man reze arc movie, so you guys can stop commenting on every single video asking where the review is for it, because here it is. So I only watched the first season of Chainsaw Man so I could watch this film, because I'm addicted to seeing new releases in theaters, even if it's stuff I don't really care about. And I wasn't blown away by the first season of Chainsaw Man whatsoever. I was like, this is very mediocre. I didn't really care about it that much. So it's fair to say I was kind of blown away by how much I enjoyed this movie. Now, if you don't know what Chainsaw Man's about at all, it's about this kid Denji, and pretty much he morphs with this devil when he's about to die, and now he is the Chainsaw Devil. And this movie follows him falling in love with this character Reze before things take a very dark turn. The story is actually really good. The animation is kind of mind-blowing. Like the last hour of this film is pretty much one giant action fight scene, and it never slows down for a single second. It just keeps getting crazier. My biggest surprise is actually how great the musical score of this movie is though. Like all the piano pieces are some of the most like melancholic, graceful, beautiful things I've ever heard in my life. I would never expect that out of a Chainsaw Man movie. At number 3, I've got Blue Moon, a new Richard Linklater movie starring Ethan Hawke as Lorenz Hart. And if you don't know who he is, he was a legendary lyricist and writer who worked on hundreds and thousands of songs with this guy, Richard Rodgers, who you probably know from Rodgers and Hammerstein musicals such as Oklahoma. And these two worked together for 15 years, but this movie takes place on the night after they stopped working together, and Richard Rodgers made his first film with Hammerstein, which is Oklahoma. So it's pretty much Lorenz just being absolutely miserable in a bar about just not being successful anymore. If Richard Linklater knows how to do one thing, it's make a movie that's just about literally people talking in like a single location. Incredibly entertaining. This movie feels like poetry. If I was a fan of these musicals, I'd probably appreciate it anymore, but this is just really great stuff. Ethan Hawke is incredible in every single scene in this movie, and just a really solid film. At number 2, I have The Black Phone 2, which obviously takes place a few years after the events of the first film, which if you haven't seen, pretty much the guy, the grabber, captures this kid Finney, and while Finney's in his basement, there's a black telephone that rings, and he can hear all his past victims in there. This film takes a totally different direction, because Finney and his sister end up going to this winter kind of church camp thing to investigate and find out more about their family's history, because of some visions that his sister had. And this movie is 10 times crazier, it's scarier, gorier, wilder in every single way than the first one, and I absolutely loved it. Like I said, this movie deals a lot with different visions and dreams, and I think the way it uses it is really creative. I'm a sucker for any sort of winter aesthetic, which this movie nails, and it is just a really good movie. I was super surprised how much I love this. But at number 1, I have Begonia, a movie about 2 conspiracy theorists that are convinced that the CEO of a pharmaceutical company is actually an alien set to destroy Earth. And if you go to my account, you can see my full Glaze Fest review of this movie. So if you want to see that Begonia review, click the video at the top of my screen, or if you want to see all my previous month rankings, you can click the video at the bottom, and thank you so much for watching.